House Speaker Denny Hastert under federal indictment, that for paying millions in alleged hush money. We're going to tell you why this case is similar to the one that brought down Eliot Spitzer. Then the Patriot Act. It's been extended, but critics are saying that the NSA's powers have hardly been touched. Our panel of attorneys, they're going to tell us about the next generation of privacy invasions that they are worried about. And also, the undercover cop who was with that motorcycle gang when it attacked a family on the west side, he fled the scene. Now, he was off duty, but does that mean he was off the hook when it comes to helping the family who had gotten attacked? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. We're going to talk about those and many other issues over the next 60 minutes, but we start with a federal indictment against the former House Speaker Dennis Hastert. Hastert, he's scheduled to make his first court appearance next week. He is accused of withdrawing cash to pay hush money to an accuser, then lying to the FBI about it. Multiple reports say that he was paying off a male student he had allegedly molested decades earlier when he was both a teacher and a wrestling coach in high school. Now, the feds say that they got suspicious when Hastert was making a ton of cash withdrawals, all coincidentally under the $10,000 amount. Now, that is the amount that would have been needed to trigger a reporting. The indictment says that he took out nearly $1 million this way. Now, prosecutors, if many of you remember, they caught Eliot Spitzer in a similar way. The patterns of his withdrawals caught the eye of the feds. Now, only later did we learn what client number 9 was using the money for. The government, it looks at amounts, it looks at patterns, and they use those to follow the money trail. Got a whole bunch of questions about this, and our panel is going to hopefully clear it up for me. Let's bring them in here. Jimmy Kasuris is a criminal defense attorney in Manhattan, sitting on the board of directors of the New York City Criminal Bar Association, frequently lecturing at New York Law School and the bar associations in both Queens and New York City. Doug Von Oist, founding partner of Carson Von Oist, focusing on corporate misconduct and selected by the Legal 500 as most influential trial lawyers in the nation. And Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLLC and a former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County District Attorney's Office. Okay, first off, let's get the one part. It's interesting what he's not charged with, and he's not charged with this point, nor does it seem the feds are going to be pursuing that there was a sexual assault 30 years ago. I guess, Jimmy, because statute of limitations still applies to that, right?
Absolutely. That's just the backdrop of it.
Okay. So where did he break the law? Because we all got bank accounts. We're not all rolling it like Mayo, but let's just dream, right? The point is, you could legally take out less than 10 grand. You don't have to report it. It's like when you go to a casino, right? And you're cashing in your chips. You can cash in a certain amount of chips. If you don't exceed a number, you don't have to report that to the IRS. When did Denny Hastert do something that actually broke the law, allegedly?
What he's charged with is lying. And he lied within the 5-year statute of limitations. When you're questioned by a federal officer and you lie, you have committed a crime. Martha Stewart was not charged with insider trading. Let's face it, her broker called and said, I got information that you should sell. It wasn't illegal. She said, sell. When the feds came to her and asked her, what made you sell? She lied about it. That was her crime. Regardless of when this happened, they looked at the money, they looked at the money trail. It was questionable. They went and asked him about it, and he's accused of lying about it. And that is what's not barred by the statute of limitations.
And I want to get to the money part in this second, Doug, but when you look at this, do you say, well, they're obviously going after him. It's not just a simple lie. It's the backdrop of maybe not what they're charging with, but both his status, I should say, but also allegedly what he was paying this money to keep quiet. Are they charging with what they can, maybe not what they want? Is that what's going on here?
Well, I think because of the statute problem, they are charging him with what they can charge him with. You got to also remember that this is a tricky kind of prosecution because the person who's on the other end of this, really, there's an extortion issue there, that this person is extorting the money from him. So the prosecutor had to make a decision in this case, which is the worst of the evils. So he probably, considering the molestation charges, he went with that.
Okay, Mayo. So explain to the audience, nobody debates, I guess there's some questions as to how Hastert made his money in more of the political realm, how magically when you leave office you can make money. But let's leave that for another night. For tonight, let's just say all his all his monies were not ill-gotten. They were all legally obtained. So he's got them in his bank account. Explain the line here where you're not allowed, what you are and are not allowed to withdraw your money in whatever patterns here, what triggered it, and then why he crossed the line to the point where the Fed said, what's going on here?
Well, you can withdraw your money any way you want to, but if you take out $10,000 or more, it triggers a reporting statute. So the banks are required to report the fact that you have taken that money out. If you took out less money, say you take out $5,000 and $6,000 instead of taking out $11,000, it doesn't trigger that reporting. However, it may be deemed suspicious, and it can be something that would trigger an investigation, or they may start to monitor you.
Even though somebody's going to say at home and say, hey, wait a second, I earned this money. Why does me taking out $8 grand a week for 10 straight weeks, you know, it's my money. I chose to put in the bank instead of under my mattress. Why am I under investigation?
Right. And again, prosecutors have a tremendous leeway. They can investigate whatever they choose to. They can decide not to investigate things that probably should be investigated. One of the other things, though, I do want to just talk briefly about the statute of limitations. There's a possibility you could still bring charges concerning the minors, because if you are a minor in a sex crime, then that statute may toll. So if you're looking at kids that might have been 16 years old, there's a chance that you could still bring charges, assuming you have credible evidence that would support that charge.
And they've given indication at this point it's going to be very hard to make that case. Okay, Jimmy. So what is allowed and what isn't allowed if somebody's paying, the reason why they're writing the checks. If someone's extorting, but on the other end, someone's trying to coerce silence by giving money to keep somebody quiet from reporting a crime, where does the law start and stop with that?
You cannot extort money from somebody. You cannot go and say, you have to pay me or I'll do something. And on the other hand, you know, Michael Jackson wrote a monstrous check at some point in his life in order to have a purported victim of his abuse not bring charges. Those charges were dismissed, and it was settled that way.
And you can't legally buy silence, right?
Well, you can. You can pay somebody, as he did, to, I guess you're not going to call it that, but you can spend your money any way you want. Somebody comes to you and says, you did this to me a long time ago. You can settle with them financially using your own money to do it. Look, he was in a really tough spot. I mean, it's very hard for a person in his position to say, look, I spent the money because I was being extorted for this reason. What he should have done is simply not lied. What he should have done is said, it's my money, I spent it the way I wanted to spend it, sought legal counsel, and clammed up.
Although, Jim, when the government lies to you, the same federal agents can come in and give you an absolute lie when they're speaking to you. There's no consequence.
That's right.
But if you lie to them, and it doesn't mean it's an outright lie, if they feel you're lying to them, it can lead to charges. Now you have the burden of defending yourself and trying to prove to someone that you didn't
But you
actually
can
lie.
say, Mayor, it's none of your business.
Right, but before we cry a river for Denny Hastert here for a second, and again, this is all alleged to this point, but let's for this conversation say that he really did enter in an arrangement, whether it was forced or otherwise, with a minor. 30 years later, all of a sudden, this comes to a head, and he starts writing checks like they're going out of style. $1 million, reportedly, it was going to go up to a total of $3.5 million. That was the arrangement that they had made. So obviously, he's trying to keep everything on the down low, and he doesn't want anyone to know, and he lied to the feds about it. Doug, my question is how this works. What if he said, okay, you know what? Send me your rent checks. I'll do bill paying instead of writing you a blank check. Were there other ways he could have done this that wouldn't have alerted or had the radar go off of the feds? If people do this and they're trying to wash money or hide money, are there ways to do it that are a lot less obvious than the way he went about it?
Well, if you're trying to mask something that could be criminal, I mean, there's many ways to commit a crime. But the bigger issue is the civil part of this case. You can settle with somebody civilly. I mean, we can come to an agreement. It doesn't even have to be in court. That, you know, there's usually a release saying, I can't hold you responsible for this anymore. That's one thing. But the criminal part of this, you can't pay somebody to not participate as a witness in a criminal case. If I'm paying you to not cooperate, not to go to the grand jury, not to testify, that could be obstruction of justice. Those are two separate things here.
That's why I said they'd call it something else. I mean, that's clearly what happened in Michael Jackson's case. I mean, there was a criminal investigation going on, and all of a sudden, it went away.
And then there's the human part of this, which is even if he'd be best served here, coming clean and telling the truth and all this, whatever lifetime he had of works or reputation, whatever, will go out the window if these allegations are proven true or otherwise here. And that is what's got to get mitigated here. And again, I don't have in any way knowledge of what did or didn't happen. We've only heard rumor and innuendos, but that's got to be going through somebody's mind here as to how will I be remembered? What will be the first sentence of my obit?
And it's also a consideration for the alleged victims, because the alleged victim may not have an interest in going public and having everybody know that he or she has been victimized. So sometimes, as we said earlier, Doug pointed out really very well that, look, you can settle civilly. And maybe the best thing would have been, hey, you want a $3 million check. You could have given the same amount or maybe even more money, and as Jim said, get a release, and you're done. But it triggers some inquiry if it finds its way to court. And at some point also, you're going to have a non-disclosure agreement there, so you're going to probably say, look, you're not going to tell anyone else. Now, is that hindering prosecution?
Like I said, it's calling it something else.
So it's calling it something else, but essentially it's the same thing.
Well, I know these three definitely want to talk about the next topic after the break. We've done a lot of privacy conversations here at the table, and it's usually one-offs as to where the line starts or stops. Well, Congress had a chance to redo the line after they put the Patriot Act soon after 9/11. And in effect, not much changed. In fact, a lot of lawmakers doing victory laps after making some modest changes to the NSA's phone surveillance program. But is it really that less invasive? We're going to take a look at that and also the privacy invasions that are worrying these three guys at the table.